it's instead of like, let's walk up together and find the route together. It was like, Sophie, this is kind of a sketchy part right here.
Yeah.
And there is no trail and we need to get up. So find a trail.
There's real risk, real danger. And
but she's like, there is a way up.
Yeah.
And the Lord will provide it for us, and go and find it. And just, it was exciting for me to do that, and scary and hard. And I'm excited to be able to empower, especially the other women who are going to be guides next summer, to do the same thing.
Hello, everyone. This is El Monte Adventure Podcast. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Isaiah Hernandez. I'm a wilderness guide, and while that is my occupation, what I really am is an adventurer. Over the past 4 years, I have traveled all around the world, developing skills such as wilderness medicine, navigation, and risk management in order to take care of myself and those that I take out into the wilderness with me. Along the way, I've had the privilege of making a variety of friends. Lifelong friendships is a key component to adventure itself. I hope this podcast is a way for them to share their story of the adventure we had together.
Usually at the start of these podcasts, it's like that feeling
of
anticipation, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's pretty cool. But we're rolling now. Hello and hi, everybody. This is technically the 4th episode, but really the 3rd fully completed episode of El Monte podcast. And I have with me Sophie Tobert.
Hello.
You want to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, I'm Sophie.
Yeah, I have been hanging out with Isaiah the past couple days. He's driving through Minnesota. So, yeah, it's been awesome. I don't really know what to say.
No, it's not good. Also, just as this camera goes out like I think every 30 minutes, so I think it'll be within that time frame of the amount of time that we want to have this podcast. But just letting you know that. But we were at Beyond together.
Yeah.
And what was Beyond like for you?
Yeah, we guided together this last summer. We never were guide partners, but we hung out at base camp together. And Beyond, I mean, they already know what Beyond is, right?
To a certain degree, but it's good. Like, you should explain it in your own words. And
Yeah. So Beyond Malibu is a ministry, an adventure ministry up in British Columbia in Canada in the mountains. And it kind of came up in my life. I honestly saw it through Instagram and just people's pictures that they were posting, and
like personal Instagram photos, or does Young Life have like
both? I mean, I had heard, I'm involved with Young Life back here, so I had heard of Beyond Malibu and people doing it, but I remember I looked on the website and saw ways that I could serve. And just began praying about it. It was a long process, and I actually applied to be a guide for the year 2022, and I got that position too, but I ended up turning it down and took a job here instead. And just timing did not feel right. So it had been on my mind for a long time. It's probably been 3 years now, just the thought of being a guide and getting to lead kids in the mountains and share the gospel with them in adventurous ways, something that my heart just, I don't know, it just kind of made me come alive a little bit inside. And so I was like, I don't know, it was also very random to me though, because if you know me, I mean, I used to be in a sorority for a little bit. I like things how I am very particular. I'm very clean. I'm not necessarily, and I love adventure, but Beyond Malibu is a different level of adventure.
It's definitely not clean.
It's a different level of intensity, and and so I knew that going into it based on stories and people I'd met and pictures I'd seen. I knew it was going to be really difficult, but I felt like the Lord really prepared me in how long it took me to get there, because I did apply and turned it down for that summer 2022, or Yeah, 2022.
It's cool to think that you would have been in my guide class.
I would have. Yeah, I would have. Cool. I don't even know if you knew this about me.
I didn't, actually. Yeah. I didn't know that you would try to apply for 2022. So that would have been interesting.
I know. Yeah. And I think it totally would have been the wrong timing, to be honest. Like,
it would have definitely been different too, because we were in a transition period and things were just, it was difficult to really, it was difficult to have like a solid structure of what it used to be. And now it's morphing into something new. But
yeah. But yeah, Beyond was an amazing experience this last summer. Definitely has changed my life. It's been hard, I think, a little bit to process everything. But the strain physically, emotionally, mentally, you're just like at your end and exhausted for a lot of the time. But it's such a beautiful, what comes out of that is such a beautiful pureness of joy and laughter and like when you're squeezed and pressed in the ways that backpacking that it does to you, I think there's just like a pureness of the fruits of the spirit that come out, instead of like here where it's like you have all your comforts and then you're like trying to be patient in just different ways, whereas like you like literally as a guide you are going to the lowest of lows and serving your campers in radical ways and cooking for them and helping them set up tents and like help literally physically pushing their bodies up sometimes, that it was just really cool to push myself to that limit of, or that level of like servitude. So
the fruit of suffering and growth.
Yeah. But
and for you suffered quite a bit.
I did. Yeah. I actually had, so I led 3 trips this summer, and at the beginning of the summer after one of our trainings, I got a pretty bad knee injuries on both knees. And that was really hard for me. Because I felt like everything in my body could keep going except for the pain in my knees. And it was like, I was limping all over base camp. It was really hard. And eventually I ended up figuring out that it was my boots. And did I tell you I ordered new boots?
You did?
I was there. You were kind of out. We kind of were on different schedules too, but.
Yeah. And at least from what I heard, you went to the doctors at Malibu and they said that the cost of you doing a checkup was, what was it?
It was $1,000 just for a checkup.
Yeah.
And it would have been around $3,000 for an MRI. Like Kelly wanted me to get an MRI, and I just was, I don't know. I didn't know what I really.
A lot of money being thrown around and talked about, and you were.
I was kind of like, I feel like it's an overuse injury, and I'm not going to pay $900 for them just to tell me that. So
I'd rather pay $300 for new shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
And test my luck.
So I got new boots, and then I was able to lead my other trips without any pain by the end of the summer. But it took a good like 6-8 weeks for that to happen.
Yeah.
And then also every trip that I led, I think all 3 of my trips were the slowest groups of the summer, which
might have been like a good thing rather than a bad thing.
I think for me at the beginning, it was actually really good that they were slow because my knees were, I was in a lot of pain. But towards the end of the summer, it was really hard for me to, I was really tested in my patience this summer. That's what I always keep coming back to is, it was really hard for me to be patient. And, like we were literally like we would start walking and stop for probably like 2 minutes.
A good old walk and stop.
Yeah. For like 12 hours, you know? So,
and that adds up.
Really and then quickly. Also just like the temptation of comparing when you get back to base camp and the guys' trips come back and they're like, we made it to our day 2 campsite on the first day. And you're like, we didn't even make it to our day 2 campsite, period. So, just things like that where it was a lot of challenge, but a lot of growth. So, yeah.
And in what ways would you say that you grew the most?
That's good. I was talking to one of our trainers, Rachel, on the phone a couple weeks ago, and she kind of asked me the same question. And I would say that because backpacking and mountaineering it was so new to me, I very much took the stance during the training season and even through the end of the summer as a guide partner of I'm going to take the back seat here and let the drivers be the drivers, let the G1s make all the decisions, and I'm not going to like overstep, because who am I? Like, I don't know anything. I'm very new to this. And I learned a lot during my training season, but I never gave myself credit for that. And I kind of just lived in this place of like, you're not enough, almost, of like condemnation and just believing all these lies. And that was really something I look back on now and I see. I didn't really realize it in the moment, but I would say I grew a lot in my confidence, because by the end, it was really cool. I was on a trip with Emma, and she really needed me to step up in that trip because she was on a back-to-back. So she was in the mountains for 2 weeks, and she needed me to make decisions and to be kind of a G1 in a lot of ways when she was just dried out. She like had nothing left in her. And the trip before was really hard for her. Just like, so it was really cool the way God used my first 2 trips and like kind of grew me into, at the end of the summer, I was able to take on a really hard trip. And just debriefing those at the end was really special, because I got to see like the ways that I was needed more throughout the summer, and the ways that I'm actually a really good guide. And so nothing really came natural to me, though. Like it was interesting to
you didn't feel like a natural flow of what, like, knowledge and experience into leadership. Would you say like it felt kind of wonky, or maybe
not that it, I mean, it came about naturally, but I think it was really hard for me to like be flourishing or thriving in the role of a guide. Because I was soaking in so much, I was learning so much. Whereas I'm really excited for this next summer, because I'm walking into something that's already familiar to me, and I can kind of put all of the like technicalities behind me in a sense, a little bit, and really focus on like, who is Sophie as a guide? Like, God, why have you called me to be a guide?
And really stepping into that G1 role.
Whereas before it was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting fire hosed with so much information, and trying my best to even learn how to set up a rappel and like do all the knots and remember them. Because I just had never tied knots like that before. I had never done that stuff before. And so it's cool how I can now take those skills and use them.
What was your experience like with the trainings? Like, how do you view them? Were they helpful? Are there things that you think could have been better? Like, what's feedback on that?
I actually think I have a really unique perspective as someone who, I keep saying I never did this stuff, but it's true. I literally had never put on a pack. You were with me the first time I put on a pack, and for our pack training in Oregon, I was terrified after that. I was like, there's no way I can do this.
With the sloshing 40 pounds of water in
our pack that they've tested us with. Yeah. I know, you're walking up and it's like fitted for like a 6-foot man. And I'm here, I'm like, my head is like buried in this pack. But wait, sorry, what was the question again?
The
trainings.
The trainings.
I think I have a unique perspective, because I'm coming in as someone who didn't have any knowledge, and these trainers had to teach me to be a guide and safely lead people up the mountain. Like, at the end of the day, I had ministry experience, and I'm able to communicate things like the gospel and stories in the Bible and lead Bible studies. Like, I came in with the ministry aspect. Or a little bit. I mean, I learned a lot about wilderness ministry too, but I didn't have any of the technical things. And honestly, they did an amazing job. Like, I would say the trips really are what I put into practice is what really helped me. But the basics that they taught me at the end of June, I felt more than ready to be a G2. Not to be a G1 necessarily, but by the end of the summer, I felt ready to guide. So, just G1. So
and that's, I guess, that would have been a major difference in 2022, because we were G2s that were forced to be into G1s, and we had the returning guides, the guest guides that would lead those trails and trips. But once they were gone, it was like, okay, here you go, and we kind of went with it after that. what training that we did, because we did 3, right? 3 trainings.
Yes, unless you're counting 10-day too. And
before 10-day, out of the trainings,
3
which
trainings.
one would you say that really stood out to you, or was really helpful, or really cool, like learning about and applying?
I would say Snow Weekend was really awesome for me, because that was the first time that we were putting on packs and staying the night in the mountains. And granted, we're staying on snow and learning snow skills. But it was just a fun weekend. It was beautiful weather.
We had great weather.
We were getting sunburned up in our nostrils from the reflection of the snow.
Yeah.
And learning how to use an ice axe and like self belay, and do like, what is it, the bucket belay?
Yeah, the bucket belay.
And the learning how to like self arrest, so you're falling down a mountain like head first backwards, and you're like, you have a pack on and you have to try and like self arrest, and learning those skills were really fun. And then actually cooking the meals and doing beyond traditions. I would say that one was the most fun for me. When I look back, like there's a lot of joy and a lot of just really good things about Beyond that I'm so grateful for the opportunity that it was. And I'm so excited to go back next summer and just really love the ministry. It's so unique to be able to be removed from distraction and lead. I just remember I had this one moment on one of my trips where I just felt like God was just so proud of the ministry, just so like, just looking at us with so much pride in his eyes of like, no, this is his work. Like, this is what I need people to be doing, is taking people out of all the noise. And
that's what it is, right?
It's what
like
it is.
The noise of human society.
Like even at base camp, it's amazing. The community we have in the Celebreck, and just the traditions and cuddle puddles and movie nights. Like,
do you want to explain cuddle puddle?
Oh man, yeah, we would have our guide team meetings every Friday morning, I think it was. Yep.
I don't remember.
Days don't exist there, so
everything kind of blends together after a while.
Yeah, but we would have guide team meetings where we would kind of just gather as guides and talk about the guides who went out the week before. We'd kind of bring back information about like water levels and how gear was, and we would just kind of talk. And then at the end, we would all just relax and cuddle together and say a prayer, and
it was a more
special time,
a more tame version of a dog pile. Yeah.
Oh, I miss it so much. So good.
Is there any maybe constructive criticism or feedback that you want to give as far as the trainings? Or is there something that maybe you thought, this could have been better in maybe this area? I mean, if you do or you don't,
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say it was the dynamic between guide 1 trainings, or like returning guide trainings and training, and then new guide training. It was often hard to balance, like, okay, we only have so much time for everyone to be setting up these systems.
Yeah.
And I feel like having a time for returning guides to set up systems, and then new guides to set up systems, it just was hard, because like I would probably need to do it 4 times before it would start to make sense for me. And like other guides who had done it before would just be like, can I just do it really quick? And then it's just like, it was a hard dynamic to kind of guide on guide, like understand,
Because that training was when we were in the back of that house, the people that were hosting us, and they had us do the before we went out,
crevasse training.
Yeah, crevasse training before we went out for snow training, because that's where we did crevasse training. But we kind of set it up beforehand and then did it out there. I do remember it being kind of combined with G1s and G2s, guide 1s and guide 2s.
Well, and rock weekend, like, and snow weekend, everything.
Yeah, and you're saying that you would appreciate kind of a separate, like, you, the returning guides, you do recap, and you as G2s, the new coming.
Yeah, or like having a quick recap with the G1s, returning guides, and then maybe they go out and help teach. And like that time though is for the new guides to learn the systems. And like it's not time for the returning guides to set it up. You can teach, you can help. Yeah. But like it was just a weird dynamic, I think, sometimes of like, okay, like you know how to do this system. This person has never done it before and they might not get it the first time, but like, and it might be more inconvenient, but like, I don't know, just that balance of trying to schedule things, I think a little bit better.
And at least from what I remember, you said, you know, G1s already know how to do this. I will be honest with you, returning as a G1, I was like...
You didn't remember. Yeah.
I did not remember because I hadn't done it for, 5 months or something like that. And, you know, you don't use it, you lose it. And so I understand what you're saying, though, as far as you already have the experience, so there should be a separate portion of time within the same amount of time that we're doing things for G1s to recap and G2s to do it. And then once you've done the recap of G1, then you go and teach it back. I do get that. Yeah, because I mean, Beyond Malibu has a lot of systems in place that are good, but they can definitely be better. But because of the time constraint, personnel constraint, there's a lot of things that go into why we're not able to do more. Yeah. And a part of that is also base camp. I mean, there's a lot of shared responsibility at base camp. And I mean, what was your time like at base camp?
Yeah, base camp, I loved it. I loved the rest weeks. I actually felt like I got a pretty good, like they kind of put me in a lot of places this summer. I would be on kids one day, in the kitchen one day. Like I kind of liked flexing, and it was hard for me to keep doing the same thing every work day of like just like random manual labor. Sometimes felt like but yeah, my time at base camp was lots of fun. I think that there was like a lot of shared responsibilities that were, I think, just it was good. I liked the flow of things. There's always room for improvement, but overall I'd say like I left the summer like still energized and like doing well. I don't know if that was the case for everyone, but
yeah. How was it emotionally for you?
Like base camp, or like how was it? I would say like things would happen in the mountains and like we would get time to debrief, but that wasn't enough. And I don't know if there's not really time or resources for there to be more, I think. But I would say I left emotionally feeling like I had a lot to process and there was a lot to just like still going on in my brain, but excited to do it outside of Beyond. Like I needed to get out of Beyond in order to understand what happened there. There was just a lot that would happen in the mountains that I still look back on like memories and try to understand and process. But while I was there, it was hard to do that while I was there because you're just kind of going and going and going. But this next year I want to walk into it with like the mindset of like, I don't need to fully understand what's going on right now. Just be present in the moment. So
yeah, sometimes there's not time to process. There's not time to grieve or to have joy or the excitement. Things are moving and you got to move along with them because pass you by or you won't be present in that time. And I understand that some people need that time, but sometimes you don't get it and you got to kind of roll with the punches. And I was talking to Julia about this back in Madison, Wisconsin, but we were kind of playing around with the idea of not only are the two GTLs involved in us emotionally, they prioritize things that happen on trail, but having two more quote unquote GTLs or people that can be there for primarily the emotional piece and debriefing with fellow guides, because like you said, there's not a lot of time to do that, and to have two people that can kind of focus on that, and not just between you and yourself, but also as a bridge between management and the people in leadership as well, because I feel that while it was there, the process could definitely be smoother and more not available, but more prioritized. Again, there's a lot of things that come into. There's a lot of constraints.
Yeah,
a lot of work to be done.
At the end of the day, a man-made ministry is never going to be perfect.
Exactly.
Like, we are all trying our best here, and I think there's so much room for improvement beyond. But there's so much room for improvement everywhere in the church, and for what we do, it's worth considering these things of like, let's make sure our people are doing, like, let's put our people at the center of like well-being, you know what I mean? And like ensuring that the guides and the base camp staff and leadership, that we're all doing okay, and what ways can we do that. And I think some of the traditions are a little bit outdated at Beyond, and sometimes just not simply not what we need to be doing in that time. Like, there's just better use of our time. But overall, I would say it's an amazing place. A beautiful place with so much of God's heart is there in that community. And at the end of the day, it's like mostly 20-year-olds running this camp.
I mean,
like it's kind of crazy, the stuff that we are we're capable of up there. And so yeah.
Yeah, it is amazing that not only how old people are. I mean, the oldest person was Jenna, and she was 29, right?
Yeah.
And I think so. I think this year Julie was telling me that the average age group is a little bit higher, and so there will be an older first year class. I'm not too sure. That's what she told me. And it's going to be really interesting, you stepping into that role of teacher, guide.
True, with someone older maybe than me.
Yeah. How do you think you'll do?
I'm excited. I think that it'll be difficult for me. Like I said, it doesn't come naturally, but that's the point of growth. And I think a stance that I often take with people when I'm teaching them is like, hey, I'm still learning too, and I like take what I say and make your own opinion from it. And like empowering people to be their own people is kind of a stance that I take more often. And so I'm excited to do that, because one of the guides for me, that's what when I learned the most was, instead of holding her hand the whole time, she's like, no, go up and find a route. Like, there is no trail. You go up and find a way around this lake, because we need to get around it. And she forced me, whereas she then took care of the group. This is Anna. And I came out of that trip feeling the most confident about my guiding abilities. And it was kind of just like a throwing of me into the deep end. And I'm like, it's instead of like, let's walk up together and find the route together, it was like, Sophie, this is kind of a sketchy part right here. And there is no trail, and we need to get up. So find a trail.
There's real risk, real danger.
But she's like, there is a way up. And the Lord will provide it for us, and go and find it. And just, it was exciting for me to do that, and scary and hard. And I'm excited to be able to empower, especially the other women who are going to be guides next summer, to do the same thing. So
yeah, it is a really awesome place to kind of take on that challenge in a very primal way, because we don't do that here, I would say, for the most part in the Western world. Like, we don't have an opportunity to really go out and do something risky enough that it's physically endangering us.
Yeah, literally.
And I think honestly, I don't think the discarding of that does us very good. Like, it keeps people safer overall, and sure, you don't want people to get hurt, but in order to be a great person, a good person, you have to go through those very real risky, physically risky things where, I mean, your life is, you have to take care of it, and you have to be aware of it, and you're also taking care of others, and you're leading them through it. So I think Beyond provides an excellent opportunity for that to take place.
Yeah. I think something that I struggled with a little bit last summer was the risk was so, I don't know, there was a lot of risk involved in a trip, to the point of like, I didn't sometimes feel like I had room for failure. And I failed multiple times, but I would be so hard on myself for it. And I had this perfectionist mindset at Beyond that was sometimes paralyzing. And that's, I think, also what stopped me from making hard decisions and doing it in confidence, even though there's a ton of risk. But I would just be paralyzed by the risk of failure. And failure on a trip can mean a lot of different things. But when it comes to like failure in terms of like being unsafe, like maybe you're trying to find a way.
Or you're doing a river crossing or a bridge crossing, and
like failure it can happen, and that can literally cost someone's life sometimes in the situations that we are in up there. And so, that was hard for me to get over. You cannot be a perfectionist there.
You can't be a perfectionist, but you can't be too loose either.
No,
there has to be a balanced middle ground. And some people will lean towards one way or another. Maybe a situation calls for you to lean towards being more lax or being more perfectionist, because the type of risk that you're taking on could determine the way that you go about thinking about, how do I solve this problem? How do I find a solution to this risk? What's the risk like? Do you remember I don't know if you remember this or not, or they taught you, but the 4 quadrants to risk. It was the low likelihood, low consequence, high likelihood, low consequence, vice versa, and then the high likelihood, high consequence. And we're always kind of in those 2 middle ground ones where, the consequence is high, but the likelihood, you'd really have to fudge it up in order to do something. And so where would you say that you sat in those areas of consequence and likelihood the most?
You mean like with my experiences?
Yeah, with your experiences.
See, I led Sun Peak and Zion. So I never did glacier stuff, which I was actually happy I didn't. I did not. I was okay with that, especially with the low snow levels. I was like, I'm good not falling in crevasses.
We had a pretty dry summer. Yeah.
But I would say like there were a couple times on trail where the terrain was high risk, high consequence.
Yeah.
Like you're full on like scaling the side of a mountain, and like there's a huge drop off right there. That's pretty high risk and you're wearing 50 pounds on your back. Like that's high risk, high consequence. But a majority, like walking up Yasher or like after Broken Tool, these forests, it's like, okay, it's like low risk right now, low consequence.
Yeah.
So
low likelihood, low consequence.
Yeah. So I had a pretty, I would say pretty low, like, I don't know, pretty mellow trips. And we were able to move slow and steady, and I wasn't worried about like tying people in for glacier crossings and things, which was exactly where I needed to be as a guide. And it took me a while to let go of all of that and like just accept where I'm at as a guide. Is like, I don't want to guide Albert. Like, I'm sorry, I don't want to be on a glacier.
Yeah, there's some routes that are much harder than others.
And like I used to think like I have to be at that level. Like I do not, and that's okay. I told Kelly at the end of the summer, I'm like, I'm good. Like I'm good doing that stuff, not doing that stuff. But
yeah.
But anyways, yeah, it was pretty low risk, but it bringing it also into like the mental game for kids of like sometimes they can be really like backpacking can be really challenging and painful for them. And like, what's the risk in that? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Sometimes I was like, man, is this even helping them at all, or planting seeds at all, and having faith and praying like, Lord, just make something good come out of this? Because one group of mine was so slow that we had to wake them up at 2 a.m. and catch a boat at 5 p.m. Like, that is how slow we were going. And we barely made our boat. Like, that's how it just, and it was so hard to wake them up because they paid money for this like adventure trip that they're going on. And when they put on a pack for the first time, it's like, they are like scared and you're just in this vulnerable state. And
it's a huge undertaking.
It is. And it's really beautiful what can come out of that and how strong and amazing that you really are as a human. But if the whole time you're in this mindset of like, oh, this hurts, like just focusing on the pain, and this relates so much to life too, any circumstance in life. If you're just focusing on your pain and struggling through the circumstances, it's like you're gonna fail. Like, it's not going to be a fun thing for you.
Yeah, you have to be aware of the negative of what's going on, but to focus on that and make that kind of the majority of what your day is like is not going to do you any favors at the end of it. It's good to be aware of it, because the awareness of how bad it is makes the good that happens so much
better.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that Beyond does an awesome job of doing. But you're close on time. Yeah,
I might have to.
Yeah.
Are you able to cut this out?
Yeah, I'm able to. I'm able to cut.
Oh, good. I was like,
yeah. But I appreciate you talking about your experience, and thank you for this. And this is, I mean,
this is adventuring. This is life, and Beyond is such an amazing example of life adventures. And I think it's great to talk about about Beyond, but also it's what's so cool and what's the most meaningful part of it is bringing what happens at Beyond and what you learn and grow into at Beyond out into the real world. And that's our calling. Our calling isn't to be mountain guides at Beyond as much as it is, but it's like we're at Beyond for 3 months. We're out in the world for the rest of our lives. And like, it's amazing how God uses these ministries to bring about his plan outside of it. And like everything that we've talked about today, like all the lessons we've learned can easily be applied to any situation in life, which is what I love about wilderness ministry too, is just how ingrained in us nature is and what's around us on the earth is, and how much he teaches us through it. So,
and the skills that you take on with your life, and they just grow you. Well, thank you.
This was awesome.
Appreciate it. Y'all take care. I'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.